Adelaide, November 1994, Nigel Mansell the winner of the 10th Grand Prix to be staged in the South Australian capital. Enjoying the moment with his old adversaries Gerhard Berger and Martin Brundle. The top three had all appeared in the first ever race round the streets there, and for Nigel, Adelaide had been the scene of heartbreak and disappointment in the past. This time, it was good to be back.
It was fabulous, very, very significant indeed, and get the 31st win at the last race, and I can tell you, I've never won the last race going into the winter, and the warm feeling that that gives you, because we have a great saying in motor racing that you're only as good as your last race. Well, I won the last race, so, you know, for me to go into the winter of 1994 and into the, you know, beginning of 1995 as the winner, it's a great feeling, especially in Adelaide too.
And justification and satisfaction for Frank Williams and for Bernie Ecclestone, the president of FOCA, after a difficult, traumatic year.
I have utmost respect for Bernie, Mr. Ecclestone, and you know, I'd like to thank him publicly now for helping and giving me the opportunity to come back for these last 4 races. And you know, I think that everybody's been vindicated. Whatever happens for the future, it was a great experience. We had a lot of fun. And of course, you know, for me, with winning the last race was something very special. Due to circumstances beyond my control, I have decided to retire from Formula One at the end of this season. When I left in '92, there was a number of conversations with all sorts of teams at the end of '92 to drive for '93. And drive some guest races in '93. And then even the beginning of '94, there was conversations. But then when the tragedies happened at Imola, I wouldn't receive any phone calls for at least a month. And then it was with the tragedies that happened and all the circumstances which are surrounding a lot of things in '94 and the regulations, that I felt that if the right opportunity was there to make a guest appearance, that maybe I could put something back into the sport that had given me everything. And it was a whole cumulation of conversations in '93, beginning of '94, and then obviously the circumstances that then happened in '94.
Brands Hatch in midsummer. Probably the most picturesque of all Britain's motor racing circuits, the scene of famous triumphs in a past age. Jimmy Clark, Sir Jack Brabham and Emerson Fittipaldi had all won Grand Prix there. But Brands last staged a Grand Prix in 1986 when Nigel Mansell won for Williams. The year before, in his debut season for Williams, Nigel had won a Grand Prix for the first time, beating the likes of Senna, Piquet, Prost and Rosberg. Now, he was back. Briefly excused racing duties in the States, where he was defending his IndyCar title with Newman Haas, Williams had lined up a test session at Brands prior to the French Grand Prix at Magny-Cours. And everyone, it seemed, delighted at his return, especially the happy snappers.
As you're probably aware, the Newman Haas team has given the Williams team permission for me to compete this weekend. So I think come back is quite a strong statement. We're just, if you like, being lent by the Newman Haas team, and you know, it's very exciting. I think it's good for the sport. It's good certainly for the fans, for television, and you know, I don't think many drivers have the opportunity to drive 2 series, the 2 largest series in the world simultaneously. So, you know, there's a lot of excitement there. I'll be the first to admit in the last 2 years there's been a lot of alterations with regulations, with cars. And, you know, I've literally, as soon as I leave here this morning, I've got the rest of the day just to get myself settled in the car and try and learn the car. And we're in a fantastic circuit here at Brands Hatch. Being here is very historic for me. I won my first race here. I won the last Grand Prix here before they lost the Grand Prix racing here. So I'm just looking forward to the day and the week now.
And the question of the moment, Would IndyCar experience be of any value in Formula One?
I think IndyCar racing, what you've got to appreciate, the last 2 years is I've driven a passive car. And so therefore, with the new regulation changes that there are in Formula One, hopefully there'll be a lot of similarities. But it remains to be seen, and I'm really looking forward to, nothing against you gentlemen, but leaving this room and getting in the car.
News of Nigel's arrival at Brands only a couple of days after competing on the west coast of the States at Portland spread rapidly. By the time Nigel was ready to step back into a Williams for the first time in almost 2 years, the crowd had grown to Premier League proportions. For a test session? So many Formula One fans had waited so long for just this. Years since anything like this had been seen at Brands Hatch. A momentous sight with a serious purpose, and it had its moments. After a season and a half of rolling starts, a little preparation necessary to get back into the old routine. On a perfect summer's day, the temperature climbed. The speed increased. And the Bush Telegraph worked overtime. The crowds poured in. And importantly, the times went down. Down towards 36 seconds by the end of the morning. A spectacular show, much appreciated by the thousands who'd skived off work for the day, just for a glimpse of the returning hero. Job done. Satisfaction guaranteed in the pit garage. With Williams designer Patrick Head and race engineer David Brown, Nigel caught the nostalgic mood.
It reminds me of Honda days, actually.
Yes.
And time for the ceremonial. As Nicola Fulston, head of Brands Hatch Leisure, invited Nigel to christen their new centre.
Nigel, and your British public, I'd like to welcome you back to Brands Hatch, to Britain and to Formula One. It's our special request today to dedicate our new Brands Hatch Pits Complex in honour of your outstanding achievements in motor racing. If you accept, we'd like to name a new centre, the Nigel Mansell Centre at Brands Hatch.
Thank you, Nicola. Well, what can I say? I'm so proud standing here and get to name the Nigel Mansell Centre. Look at the people, aren't they marvellous? I love you all, you're great. So get back to work. But I feel very honoured, and as everybody knows, we won our first Grand Prix here in 1985. But I'd just like to pause and say I'd like to thank Rothmans and the Williams team for giving me the opportunity to be here this week and to race for all the fans and for all the sponsors in the up-and-coming French Grand Prix. So I'd like you to give them a good round of applause. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, what makes this all so much special is you, part of everything, part of my life. And I mean, Nicola, I can't thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's just marvellous, and of course I will. And anyone down there would like a drink of champagne? Well, here we go. We're just going to kiss you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel.
I mean, they should all be at work, shouldn't they? It's a Tuesday. But it's great.
So you've driven the car this morning. What are your initial impressions of it? How is it different from what you're used to this year?
It's a bit more lively in the corners, obviously because it's an aspirated engine as opposed to a turbo engine. The car's a lot more nimbler and lighter, but there's no question it's lost a lot of download. It's under-tired for what the power of the car it has. All the things that I expected, maybe a little bit more, but a lot of fun to drive, very challenging, very demanding, and it's going to be a lot of hard work this week.
So it's the French Grand Prix you're going to do this weekend. Are there any plans for any more races, or what is it?
No, at this moment in time, it's they've just agreed to let me do one race, and we'll have to see what happens after that.
It's been a while since you've done a standing start. You did a couple this morning, which certainly thrilled the crowd.
The first one was good. The second one was bad, wasn't it? But I mean, we'll do a few more this afternoon as the day goes on, and I'm just about now to go to Paddock Bend to sign as many autographs and see some of the fans.
What are you expecting from this weekend, and what are your hopes and ambitions?
Well, I'd like to finish the race. I'd like to get in the points, and I'd just like to be as competitive as I possibly could. But we've got to wait and see. There's a lot of hard work to do, and everyone's got the jump on me, haven't they? They've been driving these cars for the last 18 months, and I haven't. But it's going to be interesting.
Back to work for Nigel, if not for the legions of fans. First the autographs, and then another pounding of the circuit in the afternoon. And he produced another impressive series of times. It augured well for the French Grand Prix at the end of the week. The new driver lineup for Williams paraded for the press at Magny-Cours. There couldn't have been a newspaper or magazine that didn't have a copy of the shot. Interruption was possible only by a VIP. Jean-Marie Balestre, the former president of the FIA, delighted to renew the acquaintance of an old friend. And no time for racing yet. Another appearance before a gaggle of microphones. Everyone wants the same answer to the same question. So how does it feel to be back? Red 2 had replaced Red 5 on the nose of the Williams Renault. Some things were still the same though. David Brown, who'd been race engineer for Nigel during the championship year, was still in charge. Nigel had raced at Magny-Cours twice before, in 1991 and 1992. On both occasions he'd won in a Williams Renault. But what a difference in the field over 2 years. 7 of the current Formula One drivers had never raced against Nigel before, settling into the seat, aware of the responsibilities of replacing the late Ayrton Senna in a team devastated by the turn of events. Nigel in first-time practice at Magny-Cours. Satisfactory rather than spectacular. The screen spelt out the tale of the times, but there was undoubtedly more in the car and in the driver. In the first qualifying session on Friday, he improved to 7th. That's not normally the signal for a media scrum outside the pit, but this was different. Nigel had taken over the Williams from David Coulthard, 5th in only his second Grand Prix in Canada. He appreciated that Mansell had made an impressive comeback so far.
He has. He's a fantastic driver, and when I was racing karts when I was younger, he was someone that I really admired, and I still admire his driving style. I feel that I can learn a lot from him, and it's a tremendous opportunity for me to sit there in the debriefs, listen to how he talks about the car, how he works with his engineer. And he's been a world champion, he's the IndyCar champion, he can't be doing it very wrong. So I think there's some positive things I can get from this.
When Nigel left Formula One in 1992, his new teammate Damon Hill was the test driver with ambition.
I owe Nigel a lot because he really spoke up for me when he was driving and winning the championship, and really, in many ways, helped me get the drive at Williams. And he's been very magnanimous.
It was tough for you today. It must have been even tougher for him, mustn't it? Just to come into that car, a few laps. You can't expect miracles, can you?
No, but we do from Nigel. He's the sort of person that can pull it off. You know, he's a tremendous driver, and but Formula One is very competitive and it's very difficult to just jump in and do it. But we still have tomorrow and Sunday. I'm sure things will pick up.
Damon's optimism justified in the next session on Saturday morning. Nigel top of the table. A great sight if you're from Renault and you're in France. Nothing better than a good result at home. It was shaping up well. Now in the session that really counted. Final qualifying Saturday afternoon. Nigel Mansell held pole position with the most likely threat liable to come from his own teammate. Only once before in 1994 had Hill started from the front row. That was in Spain where he won. Now spurred on by Nigel's return, he set off. His last chance to ensure an all-Williams front row. And he took the chance in real style. Nigel's help in setting up the car worked wonders and proved crucial. Not only the first all-Williams front row of the season, but Damon's first pole of the year and the third of his career. Warm congratulations from Nigel on return. A great all-round performance by the team. That impressed Frank Williams himself.
Today was quite a surprise. I didn't think we'd go that well. Nigel astonished me and most of the team, I think, coming from where he's come from and integrating so quick. That was just an astonishing performance. And Damon never ceases to surprise.
So the presence of Nigel had galvanised the team.
That's a pretty accurate word for the situation. He's brought a lot of experience with us. You know, he's been racing Grand Prix cars for about 11 or 12 seasons. His India experience has helped as well. He's come back a man with a lot of technical input that's helped us.
So the possibility of seeing more of him in Formula One?
That's possible, and we're hopeful.
I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, the Williams team, you can't do better than a 1-2, and you know, it's very, very important, and I'm just so happy. It's incredible.
It's a great motivation, and I'm very, very pleased for the Rothmans Williams Renault team, and especially Renault here in France, to have the two cars on the front row. And I don't remember the last time two English drivers were on the front row of a Grand Prix in the same team. I think that they must have to go back an awful long way to find that. Maybe Peter Collins and Mike Hawthorne, I don't know.
A great time by the master, bettered by the pupil.
Yeah, he was pushing me all along, and he made a lot of progress since yesterday. And there's no doubting Nigel Mansell's ability.
Williams in a great position to improve their excellent record in France. 5 wins in the past 7 years. Race day, and in a parade of vintage cars, Damon and Nigel led the way, appropriately in Renaults. Nigel set off for the grid, unaware of a problem with his car. An oil leak, the cause of the drama. The crew swiftly prepared the spare T-car for action if need be. But in the event, the decision was taken to stay in the intended race car. Waiting on the grid for his first Grand Prix start for a year and a half. But the start wasn't great. Williams losing the positions they'd worked so hard for in qualifying as championship leader Michael Schumacher stormed into the lead from row 2. Schumacher first, Hill second, Mansell third, then the two Ferraris. Schumacher and Hill, the championship rivals, away on their own. Mansell and a Lacey squabbling over third. Nigel Mansell's first pit stop after lap 18. The first time he'd experienced refueling in Formula One since 1983. Third again, but shadowed now by Gerhard Berger. They'd raced with each other for Ferrari in 1989 and against each other in over 140 Grand Prix. Nigel had earlier swept past Gerhard as the Ferrari emerged from a pit stop. But it ended in disappointment. The Williams losing power on the back straight, and that meant an early retirement on lap 46. Nevertheless, a newsworthy retirement judging by the camera crews that flocked to the scene to record the event. No points, but a highly eventful and worthwhile return.
It's been a fabulous weekend, it really has. I mean, the gearbox, I think, exploded going down the back straight. The team have done a superb job. I think Damon will take the lead back when Schumacher has to make his next stop. I really hope Damon wins. I'm winging my way back to America now because I've got a race at Cleveland next week, and to everybody for the British Grand Prix next week, have a good one.
But Michael won in France with Damon second. The positions reversed at Silverstone a week later. To the delight of Flavio Briatore, Schumacher and Benetton increased their lead in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. Nigel went back to the States for the second half of the IndyCar season, but his return to Formula One at Magny-Cours had posed more questions than it actually answered. Eventually came confirmation. He would return to Williams for the last 3 Grand Prix of the season. What did the experts make of that?
The guy is outstanding. I don't believe, in fact, age is a real factor. I think state of mind and your desire to be competitive is ultimately what's important. He's not a spring chicken, for sure, but he's out there competing against guys that are in their early 20s, and he's beating them. He's got masses of experience. He's got intelligence in a race car. That comes through experience, and therefore I see no problem with age as a factor. Remember, Fangio retired from Formula One racing when he was 47. He won a championship at 46. There's a lot more mileage in Nigel Mansell, Formula One, or whichever form he chooses to race in.
Really, Damon Hill has got to be given preference by the Williams team in Spain and in Japan and in Australia, and by definition that means to say that Nigel Mansell will have to defer to Damon Hill, and it's not in Nigel's nature to defer to anyone. Nigel is a racer, and like all of them, he wants to win, and it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for him to accept a situation where he can't win in order to enable Damon to have the maximum points. So I would expect, hopefully, Nigel, being the provocative chap that he is, to see him racing with Damon Hill, making it very clear that he could get past and win if he wanted to, if he was allowed to, but not actually doing so. I'm expecting, hopefully, the last 3 Grand Prix of the year to be enormously exciting and full of action, because with Schumacher back, the World Championship is going to go down to the wire. Nigel is going to be participating in a support form. And you also have to remember that in my view, I don't know whether Nigel's actually signed a contract for Formula One next year or not. I don't think he has. And if he hasn't, and assuming he wants to go on in Formula One next year, that means that he will be judged on his performance in the last 3 races. So he's got to walk this narrow line between impressing and demonstrating that he could win, but without actually doing so, so that at the end of the season Frank will say, "You're my man, Nigel, I want you in Formula One in 1995, and I hope that happens."
And on a personal level?
Oh, on a personal level, it is well known that I carry a considerable torch for Nigel wherever he goes. I like him as a man, I admire him enormously as a racing driver, and he's got something that is desperately lacking in Formula One at the present moment, and that's excitement and provocation. Wherever Nigel is, something is happening. A wheel nut is coming off, or a wheel is coming off, or he's getting involved with coming together with somebody, or he's having a row with someone. There is always something to be interested about with Nigel, and sadly that is not the case with most of them at the present moment. He's a showman, and that's what Formula One needs.
But the question is, will he win one of his last 3 Grand Prix of the season?
One of the last 3 Grand Prix, I think really it'll depend on what happens to Damon Hill. If Damon is successful in Estoril and gets 10 points, the situation is very clear Williams team have got to maximise their support for Damon. But let's say circumstances prevent Damon from being the winner, then it's a different issue. And I would expect Nigel to go 100% to win for the team, but also for himself.
Nigel Mansell will win the Australian Grand Prix.
Murray Walker having polished his crystal ball. Meanwhile, Nigel had some unfinished business to attend to, some 9 IndyCar races before the end of the season, and then the race to be ready for Formula One again.
Yeah, that was a very, very difficult week actually. We did the race in Monterey in California, and we completed the whole race, so I did race distance. Then within half an hour of the race finishing, I was on a helicopter to the airport, and then we flew through the night, refueling at Milwaukee, Gander direct then to Exeter. We stayed there for half a day, and then I flew then direct to Lisbon, Portugal. Tested then on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday morning, flew then Thursday afternoon to Spain, and then of course qualified Friday, Saturday and raced Sunday. And if I say with a smile, I was a little bit tired. That is a gross understatement. I mean, it's an 8-hour time change, and we didn't have more than a couple of hours off in 2 weeks.
So, had he actually realised just what a strain it would all be?
No, I knew it was going to be very stressful, but I mean, that was the way it worked out, and you know, it was important to do the last 3 races and to get the feel and the aptitude and the knowledge of all the things that you need to do to be competitive, and you know, it's just the way of the world.
Back to Formula One for the last Grand Prix in Europe of the 1994 season. Despite the hectic schedule, Nigel was happy, relaxed and fit in the paddock at Jerez. Jerez hadn't hosted a Formula One Grand Prix since 1990, when Nigel was second to his then teammate Alain Prost in a Ferrari. He'd won there though in 1987 for Williams Honda during the turbo years.
Morning.
Now there are no turbos in Formula One. Refueling has been reintroduced. Most of the artificial driver aids have been banned. Tyres are smaller. It's a driver's formula again. And of course, there's the plank. Introduced this year to ensure that all cars are the same height above the track surface, the 10mm wooden skid plate is fixed under the chassis. It means that nobody can steal an advantage by running the car closer to the ground for better grip, the cause of Benetton's disqualification at Spa. Murray in good humour, probably having told Nigel his prediction for Adelaide. By Jerez, Williams were coming back into the championship race. Michael Schumacher had been suspended for 2 Grand Prix after Spa. Damon Hill in Italy and Portugal took full advantage to complete a hat-trick of victories and close to within a point of Schumacher for the driver's title. Williams were 2 ahead of Benetton in the constructors. There was a vital role for Nigel to play. First qualifying, Nigel Mansell 6th on the provisional grid. Damon Hill was quickest overall. Finding the right balance was a problem, and the team searched for the answers. Nigel was also having trouble with the constraints of the cockpit. The sides were rubbing skin off his elbows. A piece of padding proved the solution. To step up the championship effort, David Brown was now working on Damon Hill's car, while John Russell took over as Nigel's race engineer. Now, it's easy to assume that race weekend for the drivers simply means drive as fast as possible till you stop. But it's all about homework as well. It has to be absorbed in the quest to find the quickest lap. second and third on the grid at Jerez, but Schumacher on his return to Formula One claimed pole in his 50th Grand Prix. He'd done his homework too.
When you've done enough of it, you don't need to do so much. But when you're getting into something new, to learn the ropes again, the car, the feeling, because your whole body is like a wired into the car. It's like a nervous center. You know, the cars give feedback to the legs, to the back, to the shoulders, to the arms, feedback through the steering wheel, even feedback through your helmet at times with the G-loading. And all this you have to compute, and you don't have a computer to do it. You use your brain, which is obviously your own personal computer. And your comfort zones are there, and you're anticipating what the car is doing. And to be at one with the car, you have to be in front of the car. You have to know what the car is going to do before you do it. And you know, to do that, then you're quick. And if you're behind the car, you're always playing catch-up. So then you're slow. And this is what, you know, I found with all the testing and the racing I've done now, it's coming back. And that's a warm feeling.
Warmth and feeling from the crowd as well. Jerez hadn't always attracted big attendances for Formula One in the past, but they turned up for this one, inspired by the prospect of seeing the returns of Schumacher and Mansell, with Hill aiming for victory, the championship at a crucial phase. It didn't start according to plan. Touch of wheel spin for Nigel at the green, and third became sixth. Hill, meanwhile, went past Schumacher for first. Roseanne Mansell and Georgie Hill studying the form in the pits. And the implacable Frank Williams locked to the monitors. Hill and Schumacher battling for the lead. Further back, it was Nigel Mansell against Rubens Barrichello of Jordan for fourth. And an impressive pass, taking Nigel within sight of Heinz-Harald Frenzen's Sauber running third. Caught up in a tangle of back markers, Nigel clipped the rear of Hideki Noda's LaRousse. He headed to the pits for attention. A lengthy stop to change the nose cone put Nigel down in 21st place. Lap 18, Damon in the pits, but delayed by a faulty seal on the refueling rig. 13 litres of fuel short this time. He'd be forced to make an early stop in the next sequence. Michael Schumacher in control and gunning for the 10 points. But his second stop dropped him back behind Hill again. So it was now developing into a thrilling tactical and strategical battle between the two top teams in Formula One. Could Hill build up a big enough advantage to resist Schumacher's challenge after the next round of pit stops? Could Nigel Mansell fight his way back into the reckoning, even pick up a couple of valuable points towards the Constructors' title? Hill's next stop, lap 36. It gave Schumacher the lead again. Mansell was past Andrea De Cesaris in the Sauber and up to 15th from 21st. Lap 42, Nigel's second stop. But an alert mechanic noticed a loose bolt on the front wing plate, and 2 laps later, Nigel was back in for urgent inspection. But it all ended in the gravel on lap 47. A spin into retirement, an event that had started so promisingly, was over.
I was very happy the way I qualified. I was happy the way I felt in the car in the race. Obviously disappointed that we'd spun off and had a few problems in the race, but I didn't set myself a high goal that weekend. I just wanted to get through the weekend without too many difficulties or problems, and I think I succeeded in doing that. My main goals then was Japan and Australia.
And as Nigel and Roseanne left the circuit, they knew it would be some time before they could enjoy the quiet life. The following morning, another press call at Brands Hatch, this time to launch the Nigel Mansell Driving School.
Brilliant. It all started here at Brands Hatch in 1985 when we won our first Grand Prix. And then to come back in 1986 and win the other Grand Prix then, the last two races that we've had here. But I think it's hats off to the lady to my left, Nicola Fulston. I think the partnership that we're going into now for the next 10 years is a very exciting one. And I think it's a perfect time in my career. I think I've perhaps just done enough to be able to say I can teach a few people maybe a few tricks of the trade on the circuit. And I think to put our partnership together at this time I think is very, very good, and I'd like to pass over to Nicola now for her few comments.
Thank you, Nigel, and good morning. We're extremely pleased to be able to have sealed this deal with Nigel. I started my racing career watching Nigel back in 1985 and 1986 when those memorable Grand Prix, and it's been an aim ever since I took over to be able to provide an opportunity for the British public to have a greater degree of access to their sporting hero and to learn something from a world champion of this class. Grand Prix today, it is hard for the general public to get as much access to Formula One stars, and in watching Nigel in IndyCar in the last couple of years spurred me on to try and make that connection between Nigel and the British public. We saw here in June 5,000 to 10,000 people. I mean, we don't exactly know how many because we weren't charging them. Came down on a hunch just to see Nigel test the Williams Grand Prix car. So I'm absolutely delighted when Nigel agreed to endorse the racing schools, and we hope that there will be numerous opportunities in the next 10 years for him to teach personally a number of our customers. And as far as I'm concerned, Nigel, this is just the beginning of our relationship. We have a long way to go, and we're looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. I think if I can add something to that, I think one of my strengths in life is that I don't do something until it's right. And I mean, we could have got involved with perhaps a racing school in inverted commas years ago, but I think that was too premature. But I think now with coming together, and if you look at Brands Hatch, Alton Park and Snetterton, which is the hub of motor racing, I think the two together is just fantastic. And I'm very proud and I feel very privileged, and I agree with you totally. This is only a beginning.
There are no other, that I can recall, internet racing schools in the world that are endorsed and backed and have a heavy involvement from a current international racing driver who's currently driving and, of course, a world champion.
I think the exciting thing that we offer here is for everybody to enjoy themselves, and we offer the potential of anyone coming with a talent to manifest itself into a possible world champion of the future. And I think that's what's so exciting about this, is that we can literally cater for the youngster just learning to drive, and we can cater for someone who is a budding world champion, and we can also cater for, if you like, a pensioner who always wanted to do something, but it's not too late in life to try it and enjoy it safely. And I think that's very exciting. It's a bit like golf. It's going to be a unique opportunity that no matter what age you are, you can have a go at it.
How much individual involvement do you imagine you'll have here at Brands?
I think fairly significant. We're going to have a look at all the programming and various things that we do together. And I think the input will literally start, it has started a number of months ago. And I think for the future it will get more and more. And I do, in fact, look forward to a number of weeks through the year that I'll be hosting some schools myself.
Starting when? Would you know that?
Starting today with some people, I believe, in the audience there. So, depending on the questions, some people are going to get some lucky rides and some people are going to get some hairy rides. Who's going to be the lucky first person?
So, just how dastardly were those questions? And just how hairy is hairy? All very affable to start with, of course. But you can always trust a racing driver. They're the safest drivers in the world.
Right, entering the circuit, the first corner we come to is Paddock Bend, and we're coming shooting down here now. Whee! Bit of G-force there, making sure I touch the rumble strip. And across into Druids, great bend Druids, tight right-hander, 180 degrees, and then accelerating down the hill into Bottom Bend. He comes down here to Graham Hill, straight. Well, hey, almost running out of circuit. And now into Clearways. Down Clearways and onto the main straight here now, using all the circuit. And now we'll be approaching 100 miles an hour to go into Paddock Bend. For years and years we've had various approaches to lend my name and fame to sort of ventures like this, but I didn't feel comfortable. But when Nicola and I got together with Brands Hatch, Alton Park and Snetterton, I think it was a fantastic opportunity for her and for me to join forces for the next 10 years and give the British public or any public around the world the opportunity to come and, you know, feel what it's like to be a race car driver for one day. And I think to be the figurehead of such a fantastic circuit of Brands Hatch is something very special.
The 150,000 or so who poured into Suzuka for the Japanese Grand Prix expected a battle royal. They didn't mind the rain that fell incessantly on race day. Japan's most popular sporting event had come round again, and once more it could be the championship decider. Schumacher's lead over Hill was extended to 5 points after his win at Jerez. So another win for Schumacher would virtually ensure him of the title for the first time. Hill knew he had to beat Schumacher to preserve his chance of the championship and make Adelaide the decider. Nigel Mansell, a master in the rain over the years, aiming for his first points in Formula One in '94. He started from the second row with the championship contenders ahead of him and Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber third. Atrocious conditions as the lights turned green. Schumacher slithering across into the path of Hill, balking his start. Mansell slipped from 4th to 6th, and Hill found his second place under threat from Frentzen. Schumacher first, Hill second. The huge rooster tails of spray thrown up by the cars, leaving droplets in the air for moments afterwards. Driving conditions were appalling. Racing conditions unspeakable, the safety car was summoned. Johnny Herbert had crashed on his first outing for Benetton since 1989. All three Japanese drivers crashed out, Noda, Inui and Katayama. Inexperience played a part, but even the best had problems.
Well, it's very, very difficult, especially when you get off to a slow start. But I mean, past the first car, the second car, the visibility diminishes. You know, if you're sort of second in line, you can pull out and you can see past the first car. But if you're third in line, you've got 2 plumes of spray. And if you're 4th, 5th or 6th, then you've got 4 or 5. And then behind that, it's blind. I mean, you're probably blind after the third car. I mean, in the opening laps, because I got a bad start, not only was I disappointed, I couldn't see where I was going. And, you know, fortunately I did the right thing. I just drove as quickly or as slowly as was possible to stay in station to things settle down, so visibility improved a little bit.
After 7 laps, the safety car pulled off, the race resumed. Schumacher first, Hill second. Then more accidents. Frank Lagorce on his Ligier debut. Christian Fittipaldi of footwork went out. Pierluigi Martini and Michele Alboreto in Minardi's crashed. Gerhard Berger retired. Gianni Morbidelli spun and clattered the wall heavily. There was concern amongst the team managers. Jean Todt Ferrari and Benetton's Flavio Briatore in earnest conversation. Eddie Jordan sprinted to see race control. Martin Brundle then had a lucky escape. After spinning, he just missed a tow truck, but collected a marshal who was fortunate to suffer only a broken leg. the race was stopped on lap 15.
The circuit got to the point that it was very dangerous, too dangerous to race, and I mean so much so that when we came around the one lap, everybody aquaplaned down the pit straight, and there's 3 or 4 accidents all in the same place. And we were very conscious if they're going to restart the race, how they were going to do it, because we all wanted to see what the track was like before then all of a sudden we go on the first racing lap. And if you just go around on the warm-up lap and do a standing start, then you can actually hit the puddles on the first racing lap and aquaplane straight off and have another accident. So we got together very quickly and said, look, the best thing to do is do a few laps behind the pace car, and then we could disperse hopefully some of the standing water and also feel what the conditions were like, and then come down and then do an actual rolling racing start like they do in IndyCar for safety reasons. And it worked out, I have to say, very well, and the officials were very good and very on top of all the situations, and I know I compliment them. They did a great job.
After half an hour, the Grand Prix, which at one stage looked set to be abandoned, was resumed. It was destined to be a 2-part race, the result determined by aggregate times. Lap 18, Schumacher into the pits for tyres and fuel from first place, and handing the lead to Damon Hill, who was soon 17 seconds ahead. Mansell and Alesi involved in a titanic struggle. This was some of the best wheel-to-wheel racing anywhere all year. Hill's pit stop. In and out in first place, having built up a substantial lead over the Benetton. And he could now run to the finish without another stop. But Schumacher was scheduled to make one more pit call, a tactical error that was Schumacher's ultimate handicap. Benetton had won on tactics at Jerez. Williams trumped them in Japan. Mansell and Alesi, meanwhile, still in a race of their own. Nigel had to overtake the Ferrari and escape by 5 seconds to claim third on aggregate times. Hill came through to win after a pulsating last lap. Schumacher was closing all the time, but the margin just too much to overcome. The 9th win of his short career and his 6th of the season, closing on Schumacher in the championship to within 1 point with 1 race left. Nigel Mansell squeezed through to third on the road on the very last lap, but there wasn't enough time to be far enough ahead at the checkered flag to take third place overall.
At times you were driving on the engine nose in front, and when I was fighting with Jean Alesi, I was very concerned that if he made a mistake at times, I would follow him straight off the circuit, because I was just watching the back of his car and just trying to look sideways and get some visibility to see where I was on the circuit. But John is a very hard driver, and we have respect for one another, and I knew when I was coming alongside on the fast corner that the line I was trying to get on the inside made the corner so tight that if I would have stayed there, we would have touched and we would have both had a big accident. So, you know, we both respected the way we were driving, and, you know, we just had to play it as hard as we could, but as safe as we could.
Mutual congratulations afterwards, and applause too for Damon Hill's timely win.
Super drive, super drive. I mean, he won that race and he won it well, and I mean, that was a cliffhanger. I mean, another few laps, I mean, for sure Michael would have got it back on aggregate, but you know, he just judged it right, and he was driving his heart out, and well-deserved win, fabulous win.
So the title was to be decided in Australia after all, an eventuality that looked highly unlikely after Michael Schumacher had won 6 of the first 7 races of the season, the first time since 1986 that the championship had gone to the wire. Poignant memories for Nigel. That was the year he'd been in sight of clinching the title from Piquet and Prost, only for a dramatic tyre blowout to deny him. Schumacher was the first to hit big trouble in '94. Off at the first chicane, hammering the barrier, a huge impact that wrecked his car and left Schumacher shaken. Johnny Herbert spun as well. and Nigel was approaching the scene rapidly, unaware of the stranded Benetton.
Oh, it was very close, no question. Came around the corner full bore, and I was a little bit disappointed with the flag marshals because all it was a still yellow which said there's something round there, but you know, wave yellow is what says there's a blocked track or something. So I came around there really quick because I was on my qualifying lap, and then the track was completely blocked, and you know, I just threw it sideways because I said if I'm going to hit him, I don't want to hit him with my legs first. So you know, we just stopped in time, fortunately.
Undeterred, he was back on the track trying for provisional pole, although with the tyres now past their best, beating Schumacher's time looked unlikely. But by 18,000th of a second, he did it. And with rain preventing any chance of improvement the next day, provisional turned into actual pole, the 32nd of his career. Michael on the front row, Damon on the second.
I'd maintained I didn't want to play too big a part in the championship. It was between Damon and Michael, and I knew that Damon would be very quick in the race. I mean, I told him so on Saturday and certainly on Sunday morning. And I could see him coming up on the inside of me, and I knew I'd just lost the jump on Michael, although I did get quite a good start. But I backed way out of it for the first corner, which put me on the dirt a little bit on the right, but I didn't mind, because that enabled Damon to come in and sneak in right behind Michael, which is what we wanted to do. And then tucked into third place before I went off at the third corner.
That adventurous start by Nigel lost him a couple of places. Meanwhile, Damon pursued Michael, and these two left the rest trailing. Nigel Mansell passed Rubens Barrichello's Jordan on his way to challenge Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren for third. Schumacher and Hill, simultaneous pit stops. And the pit crew's under enormous pressure. One blunder could cost the title. A straight head-to-head in the pit lane between Benetton and Williams. Declared a draw as the cars emerged together. The race of Damon's life, Michael for once harassed and harried. Hakkinen locked up. Mansell went through to third at the end of the Brabham Straight. Before half distance, Schumacher driving as though the devil was on his tail. Hill, after dropping 2 seconds back because of traffic, gave Michael a chance to make the break, but he lost control. The championship decided here. For Damon, a succession of if-onlys. If only he'd seen the Benetton hit the wall, if only he'd ducked left, if only... To Michael Schumacher, the title.
I heard on the radio literally the same lap that it had happened, and I didn't understand, first of all. I heard Michael was out, and I was sort of real happy because I thought, fantastic, Damon, all Damon's got to do is to finish. And then it must have been about 30 seconds later or so, Damon's out. And, you know, my heart sunk. Because I never saw Damon's car, you see, on the circuit. I saw Michael's, but not Damon's. And I was hoping, I suppose like everybody was, that he would be coming out the pits with, you know, another fresh set of tyres or something, but alas, he didn't. I think if Damon would have actually seen the accident with Michael hitting the wall, I think he would have backed right out of it, and I don't think Michael could have gone another 100 yards with the car as damaged as it was. But the problem was Damon didn't see the actual impact and came round the corner, and all he saw was Michael slowing and thought that he'd gone wide, so he went for the racing line, which is the right thing to do. But then, you know, obviously Damon and Michael, the only two which were there to see the set of circumstances. But I mean, he had every right to be emotional because, I mean, you know, he was pushing Michael, and I think eventually he would have won the race. He would have got past, and you know, to lose the championship in that manner is a great shame. And but then, of course, you know, then the team said, look, you know, P1, push, because obviously Gerhard was breathing down my neck at this time, so we had to sort of get the brain into gear and do as good a job as we could for the team.
And with the new boys sidelined, the seniors played through. Nigel into the pits on lap 54, Gerhard back in the lead. Then Berger with an excellent stop that ensured he retained first place. Heading down Brabham Straight, and leaving braking late for the corner. But Berger closed the door with little left to spare. It was only a small mistake, but it made a big difference. The Ferrari with a wheel and a half over the curb, running wide, and Nigel Mansell through to first place. The 1992 world champion in no mood to give up his first Grand Prix win since his title year, his first anywhere in 1994. It was a win that clinched the Constructors' Championship for Williams and underlined the abilities of Nigel Mansell in a Formula One car, even after a couple of years otherwise engaged. With Gerhard Berger coming home second and Martin Brundle third, it was a triumph for the veterans at Adelaide. A popular win for Nigel Mansell. He's a huge following in Australia, and most appropriate that he should render Murray Walker's prediction correct at the checkered flag. Between them, 479 Grand Prix. You might have thought it was their first each on the podium. But the press love a good hard luck story and pounced on this one. Did Damon crash, or was he crashed into? Controversy, right to the end.
I was very disappointed for Damon. When there's a winner, there's a loser, and that's the sad thing about it. And, you know, I don't know whether Damon deserved to lose, but Michael won. And what can you say, except Damon can hold his head high. He did an outstanding job to bring it down to the wire, to the last race. The two races that Michael had to step down on, Damon won, and won very well. So he did everything right. And so you've got to congratulate both of them, but you know, it's with great regret when one wins, one loses, and it could have been so easily the other way around. So let's just everybody make up their own opinion. I have mine, and I should keep it personally to myself. But let's just say I'm very proud of what Damon did. I think all the fans have been absolutely fabulous, and I think the support that you've given Damon and the other British drivers over all the years is second to none. I mean, you know, British fans support all their drivers, and yes, I do have a special relationship, and you know, God bless them all for that. I mean, it's something very, very special, and it gives me the encouragement to continue. And I hope that with the victory that we had in Australia, we'll give something back to them. So I'd like to thank the sponsors, Rothmans and Renault, and of course the Williams team, all the boys at the Williams team, my engineer John Russell, Damon's engineer David Brown, and of course Damon, for Frank and Patrick, for the support, the encouragement, and the opportunity to do the last 4 races. I think it's something very special. And regardless of what happens in the future, I think it was very exceptional.